3 bridges were struck in less than 2 days, and those attacks may have done far more than damage concrete and steel. They may have exposed one of the biggest weaknesses behind Russia's campaign in Donbass. In the final days of June 2026, Ukraine said its forces hit a road bridge near Novoazovsk in Donetsk and 2 railway bridges in Luhansk. According to Ukraine, Russian forces used these routes to move personnel, weapons, ammunition, and logistical supplies. At almost the same time, Ukrainian forces continued striking railway infrastructure near Rozdolna in occupied Crimea, including damaged sections that Russian repair teams were trying to restore. The message was becoming increasingly clear. Ukraine was not only trying to destroy military targets. The pattern suggests that Ukraine is trying to slow the wider system supporting Russian forces. The timing makes these attacks even more important. Russia still wants to capture the remaining parts of Donetsk, yet independent assessments say thousands of square kilometers remain outside Moscow's control. At the current pace of Russian advances, reaching that goal before the end of the year would be extremely difficult. Stay with us to discover why destroying one bridge can sometimes change a campaign more than capturing one village. If Russia still has large numbers of troops, powerful artillery, and the ability to repair damaged infrastructure, how can repeated strikes on logistics threaten one of the Kremlin's most important military objectives? Russia wants full control of Donbass, but a campaign of this size cannot survive on political orders alone. Donbass is made up of Donetsk and Luhansk, 2 regions that have become central to Moscow's war message. Russia controls almost all of Luhansk, but large parts of Donetsk remain outside its hands. Until Russia controls the remaining Ukrainian-held areas of Donetsk, Moscow's stated goal of taking the whole of Donbass remains incomplete. This is why the fight for Donetsk matters far beyond the map. For Moscow, taking the region would support its claim that the war is still moving toward a clear result. For Ukraine, holding the remaining cities and defensive lines prevents Russia from turning years of sacrifice into a political victory. The battle is therefore not only about villages, roads, or industrial towns. It is also about whether Russian military pressure can still produce the outcome the Kremlin promised. The scale of the task remains large. The Institute for the Study of War estimates that Russian forces still need to seize about 5,305 square kilometers in Donetsk. ISW assessed that, at the current rate of advance, Russia would be unlikely to capture the remaining 5,305 square kilometers of Donetsk by the end of the year. That does not mean Russia has stopped moving. It means the distance between Moscow's deadline and the battlefield is still wide. A large army can continue attacking for a long time, but size does not remove the need for supply. Infantry units require ammunition, food, medical support, and fresh troops. Artillery batteries need shells delivered in steady numbers. Armored vehicles depend on fuel, spare parts, repair teams, and recovery equipment. When any part of that chain slows down, the attack may continue, but it becomes less powerful and less flexible. This is where political ambition meets physical limits. A commander can order another assault, but that order has little value if the guns cannot keep firing or the vehicles cannot move. A frontline formation may struggle to maintain pressure if repairs and ammunition deliveries fall behind schedule. Ukraine appears to understand this weakness clearly. Instead of trying to match Russia only through direct battles at the front, it is placing growing pressure on the system behind those forces. The apparent purpose is not to stop every truck or destroy every rail line. It may be to create delays, force detours, increase fuel use, and make deliveries more exposed. Small disruptions can then build into a wider problem. A convoy that arrives several hours late may delay an artillery mission. A damaged bridge could delay heavy equipment from reaching the unit waiting for it. A blocked railway can push more cargo onto roads where drones have more chances to detect movement. None of these events alone decides the war, but together they can reduce the speed of a major campaign. This also explains why Russia's slow advance matters so much. When every kilometer already requires time, manpower, and large amounts of firepower, pressure on logistics raises the cost even further. The Kremlin may still have the resources to continue, but continuing is not the same as meeting a deadline. So what matters more in modern war, the number of troops at the front or the system that keeps them supplied from behind? To understand why Ukraine is striking bridges, the next step is to follow the routes linking Donbas with Crimea and the occupied south. Ukraine is no longer focusing only on Russian forces at the front. It is trying to slow the transport network that keeps those units supplied. On June 28th and during the night of June 28th to 29th, Ukrainian forces said they struck a road bridge near Novozovsk in Donetsk and 2 railway bridges in Luhansk. These locations mattered because they were part of the wider system moving troops, ammunition, fuel, and military equipment toward the battlefield. A road bridge allows trucks, armored vehicles, repair crews, and supply convoys to cross difficult terrain without losing time. When that bridge is damaged, traffic may be forced into one lane, redirected onto smaller roads, or stopped until engineers make emergency repairs. Even a structure that remains standing can become a serious problem if its weight limit falls or heavy vehicles can no longer pass safely. Railway bridges carry an even larger burden. Trains can move artillery shells, fuel tanks, engineering machines, and heavy vehicles in quantities that road convoys cannot match easily. One train can replace many trucks, which saves fuel, reduces the number of drivers needed, and limits exposure along the route. When a railway line is cut, Russia does not simply lose one track. It must reorganize the movement of cargo across a much wider area. Supplies may be unloaded at another station, placed onto trucks, and sent through roads that were not designed for such heavy traffic. That process takes more time and creates new points where Ukrainian drones can watch, follow, and strike. The attacks also reached beyond bridges. Ukraine said it hit a logistics depot near Novosvitlivka, several UAV control sites, and a Russian electronic warfare command position. Each target served a different part of the same military system. The depot stored material needed by units farther forward. Damaging it could reduce the amount of fuel, ammunition, or equipment ready for quick delivery. UAV control centers supported reconnaissance and strike missions over the battlefield. An electronic warfare command post would normally help coordinate efforts to detect, disrupt, or limit hostile drone activity. Taken together, these strikes suggest a wider plan. Ukraine appears to be targeting movement, storage, surveillance, and protection at the same time. A bridge attack can delay transport. A depot strike may reduce available supplies. Damage to drone control and electronic warfare can make the rear area less aware of what is approaching. This changes the meaning of a deep strike. The purpose is not always to destroy a large number of vehicles in one explosion. The greater goal may be to create a chain of smaller failures that spread across the supply network. A late fuel convoy can delay armored movement. Missing artillery rounds can reduce the strength of an attack. Damage to electronic warfare infrastructure could weaken protection against later drone attacks. Each problem adds pressure to the next one. Russia can still respond. It can reroute traffic, send repair teams, increase air defense, and move supplies through other regions. Yet every response requires more vehicles, more personnel, and more protection. That can force commanders to divide resources across more locations. This is why the campaign is broader than a series of separate explosions. Ukraine is trying to interrupt the rhythm that allows the Russian army to operate as one connected force. But the most dangerous part is not only that Ukrainian drones can hit a bridge, it is that they may return when Russian engineers arrive to repair it. That idea became much clearer in Crimea, where Ukraine appeared to shift from destroying infrastructure to disrupting the entire recovery process. According to Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, drones struck the railway bridge crossing the North Crimean Canal near Rozdolny during the night of June 21st to 22nd. Ukrainian officials said the attack damaged the railway line and destroyed part of the bridge, stopping rail traffic on that section. The strike alone was important because the route supported military transport across occupied Crimea and connected with supply lines serving southern Ukraine. The story did not end after the first explosions. Ukrainian officials later reported that Russian repair equipment arrived at the site to begin restoring the damaged railway. During the following night of June 22nd to 23rd, another drone attack targeted both the repair machinery and the bridge area again. If those claims are accurate, the objective was no longer limited to damaging infrastructure. It was also about preventing Russia from bringing that infrastructure back into service. This approach creates a different kind of pressure. Destroying a bridge forces engineers to respond. Hitting the repair effort forces them to begin again. Every delay extends the period during which trains cannot move normally. Every new repair mission also requires additional vehicles, construction equipment, security teams, and engineering specialists. Instead of solving one problem, Russia may find itself managing several at the same time. That changes the way military planners must think about logistics. Protecting a bridge is difficult enough. Protecting repair crews can be even harder because they often work in fixed locations for many hours. Heavy machinery cannot move quickly, and construction work follows a predictable schedule. Those conditions may create fresh opportunities for reconnaissance and follow-on drone attacks. Air defense also becomes part of the equation. Russia may need to position additional systems around damaged crossings to protect engineers and equipment while repairs continue. Those assets cannot be in two places at once. Russia may have to spread air defense and electronic warfare assets across more rear area sites. The result is not necessarily a shortage of air defense, but a growing need to divide available resources across a wider area. This pattern matches broader reports about Ukraine's campaign around Crimea. The Associated Press has described Ukrainian drone operations as part of a wider effort to isolate the peninsula by placing continued pressure on transport links and military infrastructure. The Guardian has also reported that repeated drone activity has disrupted logistics and pushed the Russian-installed authorities to tighten security measures across Crimea. These reports suggest that separate strikes may actually belong to one larger operational design rather than isolated incidents. Seen from that perspective, each bridge becomes more than a transportation structure. It becomes a recurring point of competition. Russia tries to restore movement as quickly as possible. Ukraine tries to interrupt that process before normal traffic returns. The operational contest, therefore, extends beyond the front line to engineering units, maintenance teams, and the systems needed to restore military transport. If you were responsible for defending this network, where would you place your strongest air defenses? Would they protect the troops at the front, the bridges carrying supplies, or the fuel depots supporting both? That question becomes even more difficult. If rail and bridge disruptions continue, more traffic may be pushed onto roads that are slower and easier for drones to monitor. Russia has not been cut off, but keeping its supply system moving is becoming more expensive, slower, and harder to protect. Moscow still has several ways to respond. Engineers can repair damaged bridges, military traffic can be moved onto smaller roads, and heavy cargo could also be redirected through routes linked to Rostov. Russia can also place more air defense, electronic warfare systems, and security units around important transport points. The problem is not that Russia has no road left. The real problem is that every replacement route usually creates new limits. A longer road needs more fuel, more drivers, and more time. A smaller crossing may not carry heavy vehicles at the same speed. A damaged railway can force cargo to be unloaded, placed onto trucks, and moved again before it reaches the front. Each step slows the process and adds another place where something can go wrong. Road transport is also easier to observe than rail movement in several important ways. A train follows a fixed line, but it can move a very large amount of cargo in one journey. Trucks must travel in greater numbers, and they often stop at checkpoints, junctions, damaged sections, or temporary storage areas. Such pauses can give reconnaissance drones more time to detect and track a convoy and follow its direction. A truck column also cannot move as one smooth machine when the road ahead is damaged. Vehicles may need to turn around, wait for engineers, cross one at a time, or move onto rough ground. Fuel tankers, ammunition trucks, and repair vehicles do not all have the same speed or protection. Once the group begins to stretch out, the convoy becomes harder to control and easier to separate. Protection creates another cost. Russia may send armored vehicles with supply columns, place electronic warfare units along the route, or move short-range air defense closer to key roads. These measures can reduce the danger, but they also pull valuable equipment away from other missions. An armored escort protecting fuel cannot support infantry elsewhere. An electronic warfare team covering a bridge cannot block drones over another sector. A radar watching a transport route may be less available to defend a command post or artillery position. The system can still function, but it must spread itself across more locations. Crimea shows why this pressure matters. The peninsula has long served as a military base, a transport center, and a major link between Russia and the southern battlefield. Yet when bridges, railway lines, ferry connections, fuel sites, and repair points all face repeated threats, Crimea can no longer be treated as a quiet rear area. It becomes a space that must be watched all the time. Air defense crews must stay alert. Engineers must prepare for fresh damage. Security units must protect transport hubs. Commanders must plan for delays before a strike even happens. That constant need for protection changes the value of the region. Russian operations are still held in Crimea, but every supply movement through it may now require more planning and more military cover than before. This is how pressure on the rear area can shape events far away. The damage may happen many kilometers from the trenches, yet the cost appears later in slower deliveries, weaker support, and fewer choices for commanders at the front. Russia can keep the network alive, but every repair, detour, escort, and delay raises the price of doing so. And when the rear begins to move more slowly, the first units to feel that pressure are the ones still trying to advance. Disrupting logistics does not automatically stop an army, but it can make every offensive slower, more difficult, and far more expensive to sustain. That is the difference between destroying a military unit and weakening the system that supports it. A frontline force may still have enough soldiers to continue attacking, yet its effectiveness depends on a constant flow of supplies arriving at the right place in the right time. When that flow becomes less reliable, the pressure reaches the battlefield little by little instead of all at once. Artillery is one of the clearest examples. Fire support often shapes the opening stage of an assault because it suppresses defensive positions and allows infantry to move forward with lower risk. If ammunition arrives later than planned or in smaller quantities, commanders may have to reduce the intensity of bombardment or shorten the time available for preparation. The attack can still begin, but it may face stronger resistance from the first minutes. Fuel creates another challenge. Modern armored formations depend on continuous movement to protect themselves, reinforce weak sectors, and respond to unexpected situations. Tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, engineering equipment, and recovery vehicles all consume large amounts of fuel during combat operations. A delay in delivery limits flexibility and forces commanders to choose carefully where those vehicles should be used. Reinforcements are affected in a similar way. Fresh personnel cannot strengthen frontline units if transport slows or supporting vehicles arrive behind schedule. That does not mean every operation comes to a halt. If shortages or delays become serious, commanders may have fewer options for coordinating larger attacks and could rely more on limited advances. This is why logistics influences political goals as much as military plans. A deadline for capturing territory may be ordered, but success depends on thousands of daily activities that cannot be accelerated simply through orders. Drivers must complete their routes. Engineers must restore damaged crossings. Fuel must reach armored units. Ammunition must arrive before the next attack begins. If those tasks become slower, the overall campaign also loses momentum. Seen from this perspective, the discussion is no longer only about whether Russia can advance. The more important question is whether it can advance quickly enough to match its own political timetable. That is a very different measurement because it focuses on speed, sustainability, and cost instead of looking only at changes on the map. Ukraine appears to be building pressure around that gap. Repeated strikes on transport infrastructure suggest an effort to stretch the time needed for Russian operations rather than expecting one dramatic attack to change the war. Every damaged bridge, delayed convoy, interrupted railway, or disrupted depot can add another obstacle that military planners must solve before the next phase begins. That approach also explains why these attacks deserve attention beyond their immediate physical damage. Looking at one bridge alone may not seem decisive. Looking at the entire network tells a different story. Separate strikes begin to form a connected pattern aimed at reducing the speed of one campaign instead of chasing one symbolic target. What do you think would create greater long-term pressure on the battlefield? Should Ukraine continue focusing on bridges and supply routes, or should it place more effort on destroying tanks, artillery, and frontline troops instead? Viewed one by one, these appear to be isolated attacks on infrastructure. Viewed together, they reveal a growing map of pressure that is gradually closing around Russia's campaign in Donbas. 3 bridges struck in Donetsk and Luhansk were not only 3 explosions on a military map. They may be signs that Ukraine is trying to change how this war is measured. Russia still has large numbers of troops, powerful artillery, repair units, and alternative routes. It would be wrong to suggest that Moscow has been completely blocked. But the real issue is no longer whether supplies can move at all. The issue is how much time, fuel, protection, and manpower Russia must spend to keep them moving. This is why the campaign may become more dangerous over time. Ukraine does not need one massive strike to break the entire front. It only needs to make the Russian supply system slower, more costly, and easier to watch. In the coming months, the key question may not be how many square kilometers Russia can capture. It may be how much Russia must lose, move, repair, and protect to keep that advance alive. If pressure on bridges, railways, depots, and transport hubs continues, it could make an already difficult territorial deadline even harder to meet. Do you think Ukraine should continue focusing on Russia's supply network or place more effort on frontline weapons and troops? Share your view in the comments. Like this video, share it with others who follow the war, and subscribe to Military Force for more clear analysis of how modern wars are fought, sustained, and decided.